Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, for those of you who routinely geek out on this channel, one, thank you very much. But number two, you know we have spent a tremendous amount of time and energy focusing on all the different ways that they are trying to disarm us. And it comes from the highest forms of government down, from the lowest forms of government up, and now it's beginning to come to us from the private sector as well. It appears that the walls are closing in on all directions for any of you who have the audacity to want to exercise your inalienable right of self-preservation. Think it's bad? Well, think about this. It might get worse because, yes, your doctor may become complicit in it too. In fact, the entire medical community may actually become complicit in your and I's disarmament. Don't believe me? I'll give you some examples and I'll talk to you about some stuff that we ought to think about. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about how they will use your doctor to disarm you. Okay, so roundabout way, found a story on ammoland.com. If you guys aren't geeking out over on ammoland.com, you should, because they got a lot of cool stuff to read over there, a lot of very informative information. It talked about a story that had been published in The Atlantic, a journal that I don't often read because, well, candidly, I don't like The Atlantic. However, it was a almost 2,000 word article that talked about how there is a growing trend amongst large medical care companies and hospitals to start inquiring of patients about their firearms ownership and storage and things like that. Let me say that a different way. There is these large conglomerates of healthcare providers who are now standardizing practices such that doctors are beginning to ask their patients questions such as, do you own firearms? How many firearms do you own? When do you store them? And things like that. In addition, there is a large segment of emergency rooms where people are being brought in, sometimes for nothing completely related to a firearm, crashed on a skateboard and broke his arm kind of thing, and yet they're still asking questions about firearm ownership and storage provisions. Now, the article goes on to state, the Biden administration and the ATF have been focusing heavily on gun violence issues in the United States. And even though they're focusing on all the wrong causations, hey, don't let that get in the way. But it's forced the medical community, and predominantly the CDC, which has been politicized itself, as we know, into increasing a lot more investment as far as funds and research to try to establish additional reasons why this data is necessary to medical professionals. And in many ways, the medical community is much like the tech field, where they are very openly anti-2A, and you almost have to go underground if you actually have the audacity of wanting to exercise your inalienable right. Now, of course, this has led to a formation of a clandestine operation of pro-Second Amendment physicians known as the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, and they are beginning to very loudly sound the alarm bell as to the invasion of privacy which is taking place, and the fact that most of this, if not all of it, is not needed for accurate medical diagnosis. As the spokesperson for the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership pointed out, imagine this scenario. You visit your doctor for back pain. Your doctor asks you if you have firearms in your home. Then he announces that your family would be better off, especially your children, if you had no guns at all in your house. You leave the doctor's office feeling uneasy, wondering what guns have to do with your backache. Does your doctor care about your family's safety? Or instead, did he use your trust in his authority to advance his own political agenda? But I want you to actually take it one step further here, because if you take a look at the expansion of red flag laws, and we see this in a lot of states right now that are hell-bent on civilian disarmament. Most states right now allow a extreme risk protection order, red flag petition, whatever you're going to call it in your jurisdiction, to be petitioned by one of two parties. That is usually either a household member who lives with the individual that's going to be subject to the order, or a law enforcement agency. But when you take a look at all of these expansion efforts in all of the states that are trying to expand the red flag laws, what's the one category of individuals that they're trying to include as a petitioner for a red flag law? That's right, it's physicians and mental health workers. And so for that reason, in many parts of the country, questions about your gun ownership have actually become quite routine no matter why you were seeing your doctor. And then, of course, this begs the question, and this is something that we're really picky on right here at Washington Gun Law, is are doctors beginning to step out of their lane? What do doctors do with that data? Do they start advising their patients like, oh, you own 4 firearms. I really recommend you get rid of 3 of them. Or, oh, you have a collection of firearms and I think you should store them in the following fashion. Because the last time I checked, just because you got the letters MD behind your name does not make you a firearm expert. Just like I have the letters JD behind my name, and I can certainly talk to you about gun laws, but how frequently do I defer tactical questions and things like that to the actual tactical trainers? So there's 3 things I really want you to consider here, okay? Number 1, no matter how much you love your doctor, and like I say, I'm very fond of my doctor. I think he's a hell of a good guy. My firearm ownership has nothing to do with the health issues that we're going to need to discuss. Number 2, gun ownership is a constitutional inalienable right. Is your doctor going to ask you if you're going to church? Is your doctor going to ask you if you intend on voting in November? Is your doctor going to ask you, hey, by the way, if you get charged with a crime, do you intend on hiring an attorney? No, of course not, because the exercise of your constitutional rights also has nothing to do with your health. And finally, you are the consumer. You are the person paying the doctor here. And so you have the right to go to any other physician that you see fit. You also have the right to say, well, you know, doc, that's an interesting question. What's the next question? And candidly, if my doc were to ask me these questions, I'm not answering them. Why? Because it has nothing to do with my cholesterol. It has nothing to do with my blood sugar. It has nothing to do with my weight or any of the other issues that a 54-year-old dude normally talks to his doctors about. But make no mistake about it, between these large corporate healthcare providers and the significant influence that the health insurance industry has on all of them, do not be surprised if this becomes a routine part of every single questionnaire you go to anytime you are seeing any physician for any reason and for any ailment. This is just yet another way that they are going to try to disarm all of you, the lawful and responsible gun owner. Listen, if you guys got any more questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you should know how to get a hold of Washington Gun Law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is down there in the description box as well. And then let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.